Looking back at your prelim task, what have you learned in the progression from that to the final product? I found the preliminary task to be quite challenging at first, but once we completed it, I guess it was fine. The hardest thing to overcome was mainly the iPads. They were quite inconvenient to use because they weren't obviously the best camera out there, and they don't have the best camera out there, so it was difficult to film because obviously it's not a small compact camera, it's this whole huge thing that you have to be holding like with your hands, so, and you can't use a tripod, so it was difficult to have stability and also to film the shots correctly because your positioning would be off, and if your positioning's off, that would affect your editing, and you would have a lot more jump cuts than you would if you were to have a tripod, as it would be stable and you can position the camera at how you want rather than having to think, oh yeah, let me just like turn it here because this is how it was before, and you know, things like that. So, and also the iPads, they don't film in HD, so I mean they are HD, but they don't have the best quality in them, so it doesn't produce the best quality film. Also, another thing that was hard to overcome was doing continuity editing. That was quite difficult because it was hard to make the sequence flow, or like if you didn't have the right shots, you couldn't, like there was no way, no matter what you'd done, you could make the sequence flow. You had to make sure you had the right shots initially and then try to edit it to make sure it flows. Like, I remember one thing that we struggled with was transitions and fades. I remember there was this one scene where Luke had a phone, so me and him I was sitting on one side of the table and he was sitting on the other side of the table, and I had a phone and I slid it over to him, so I slid it across the table and he caught it, but because obviously the iPad was difficult to use as well, so Rhiannon had to stand on one side, film me sliding over to him, pause, like stop that, check if it was okay, then stand on the other side, film me again sliding it over to him so you can film him catching it, and that was difficult in terms of continuity editing because we didn't have a tripod, because we were using an iPad, we couldn't it didn't have any continuity when we came to edit it, because that flow that you needed to show the transition of you sliding it to him, it was difficult to create that. So I remember that shot, I think we filmed it about 5 times before we got it right. So continuity editing is definitely a difficult thing to achieve, especially with the iPad, so that just made things more difficult. Also, transitions and fades. Like, looking at it now, I just look at our transitions and I think it's just horrible because, like, the transitions we used, instead of using a transition, we used fades, and this was to cover up the jump cuts because using the iPad, of course, we couldn't position things correctly, making things look out of place. So we put the fade in to try and counteract that. But then fades aren't supposed to be there because fades show passing in time. And it wasn't a passing in time. It was supposed to be continuity. It was supposed to be continuity and it was supposed to flow. But having the fades made it difficult for it to flow. So you realise that, oh, that's wrong because it didn't flow like it was supposed to. And it just looks unprofessional, it doesn't look right. And also, another thing that was a bad element about it was when we were filming, we changed the aspect ratio throughout the shots. So some shots we were filming with the iPad horizontally like this, and then sometimes we were filming vertically with the iPad like this, and then you can see from the shot you had a vertical shot, then a horizontal shot, then a vertical shot again, and it just changed aspect ratios, and it has fades in between it, so you just see it changing through the video, and it doesn't look professional at all. It just looks wrong, to be honest. One thing that I thought that was quite a good element about it was the phone slide scene. I mean, although it took us such a long time to do that, to take those shots and edit it to make that seem good, I'm actually quite proud of it because it does work. I think is one of the main things in the film that does, in the preliminary task, that does work. So I'm quite proud of that. Also, with using the iPad, to edit it, we use CuteCut, and CuteCut was quite simple to use, but obviously with everything, if you've never used it before, it's quite difficult at first. So it was difficult at first to find our way around it. Then once we did, it was completely fine. So we knew how to edit and stuff. But CuteCut had a limited version, a professional version that you'd have to pay for, and we were using the free version, so it was really limited, so there wasn't many things that you could use or do, so it didn't enable you to actually be completely creative and put loads of different things into it, because we were just limited to adding things like simple transitions along the way. And overall, I think my preliminary task definitely shows progression. Just comparing our preliminary to our opening sequence now, it shows a lot of progression. I mean, it's a learning curve because I feel like it was preparation for the opening sequence, because if we hadn't have done that, my opening sequence probably would have been looking like the preliminary task, which I look back at and I can kind of laugh at it because I can see where I went wrong now. My camera skills have definitely improved because I wasn't using anything like focus or zoom in the prelim, but in my opening sequence I'm using zoom and I'm using focus, and I'm using it effectively as well. Also, editing has definitely improved because we've used better software, so we use Final Cut Pro to edit our opening sequence, and there was a lot more available on that, so you can basically almost do whatever you like, and you weren't limited creatively. You could do whatever and it would work. But with CuteCut, you were limited. Also with just the construction and the process of making a film, I've learned a lot from that, because before I didn't know the process of making a film. I didn't know that you had to conduct audience research. I didn't know all these little things, but now I know all of that, and I see how it helps and how it contributes into making a good film. Also, by doing the preliminary task, we just did the preliminary task to fulfill the task, but by doing the opening sequence, by doing the preliminary task, then the opening sequence, we created an opening sequence that not only fulfilled its purpose, but entertained others as well. So without doing the preliminary task, we couldn't have been able to entertain others as well. We probably would have just been able to fulfill the purpose of the opening sequence and just leave it at that. And obviously that's not what you want in a film. You want a film that can entertain people, and I feel like our opening sequence does that. And without going through what we did by doing the preliminary task, we would never have done this. So I guess that's a good thing as well, and that's what I've learnt by doing the coursework overall. So yeah.